So I'll probably end up starting the video from here. This is my Scarlet Witch crown. This is already sprayed, so it's got my primer on it. I do a gloss black. I'm going to go ahead and maybe go over it with a light sanding just to kind of fix out some of the bubbles. But when the resin print came out, it comes out kind of looking like this. And then I do a gloss coat just to get a nice kind of, the finish is obviously shinier, so whenever I do the paint over top, I've still got a shiny finish, but it also adds the black to the lower layers, which I can't really do after I do the red. So I'm going to add a little bit more here. Normally I would do this outside, but I just have a little bit to do here, and I'm going to let that one dry. You can also do a fillable sandable primer. Let me show you what that looks like. Whenever you're working on resin prints, if you need to finish them, the Rust-Oleum 2-in-1 filler and sandable, what you do is you spray and let it dry, and then you can easily sand it out. So this will help fill in some of like the cracks and crevices that just naturally happen with resin prints. This one would probably be a good idea to do it for, so I believe I will. I do have a sanding box, so I'm going to go over here and use it real quickly. But I'm just taking my Pokeball, my filler. Let me see if it even is clogged. Oh, it looks kind of cleaned up. This is my sanding box over here. I'm going to throw him in here real quick. Okay. So I just sprayed this over any of the sections that had more texture than I want them to. And you can see how it kind of looks here. It's a bit shiny. As it dries, it will turn into a matte color, and that's how you know that you're ready to sand it. But I'm just going to let him sort of chill out here for a bit until it's dry. I think I might not need to do much more sanding on top of this. He also has a stand. I already put his tail on, but I could have done that later. And I don't believe on the bottom I have any of the filler. So I think for this crown I can go ahead and start getting the other paints ready. I also have a second crown that's the Scarlet Witch crown that's hanging out in the cure machine right now, and it comes in 2 halves, so it needs to get put together. But right now I'm just gonna maybe hold off on that until this one's ready. Can go ahead and get that one out and start sanding it. So this is my resin printer set up. I have something already printing over here. And I have my pieces that I've already washed and cured. So this Lady Loki crown and Scarlet Witch crown. So we'll take them over and I'll show you what they look like. So I have my pieces here. Whenever they come off the printer, depending on how you printed them, they may be in one full piece or in multiple pieces. My Scarlet Witch crown, because it's too big for the printer to come off in one piece, comes in 2 halves. So I'm going to go ahead. What I like to do with this is first sand it a bit before I stick the halves together. So you do just a rough sanding. But that's how that will go. So I'm going to go ahead over to my sanding box and sand those real quick. Just to get, whenever they come off, you have supports that hold it up, and as you pull the supports off, you can see it has some like jagged edges here. So I just take the Dremel and do a rough sanding over those edges to make sure there's nothing sticking out that's going to be uncomfortable or that looks odd. go ahead and sand those down. So those are ready. I have a sanding block. And my sanding block I use for more of the finer sanding. Hello. I use Soraya Tech. I can show it to you. This is my favorite. So I have a few different resins. I've used this one. It's a water washable blue, but it's not super durable. Sorry. So I wouldn't recommend it unless you absolutely need it. I needed it to have a like a clear there were these spikes or something. So this is more translucent. But for every day, I used to use a gray Anycubic, but it's a bit brittle and it's also not very reliable. So this is my favorite, Soraya Tech Fast in smoky gray or smoky black. Sorry. It's a little bit more expensive, like maybe $10 a bottle more expensive, but it is reliable. And so I would rather take the reliability and knowing that my prints aren't going to fail. With the gray, they're more opaque. Like the Anycubic gray, it's extremely opaque. You can't see through it at all. This, you can. It's a little bit translucent. This is because this uses an ink versus like a powder dye, and the ones that have the higher opacity, those tend to like kind of get clogged and things aren't super even, and so it will just fail randomly in a print. So this is a little bit better, and it's because of what it's made of. So Soraya Tech is my favorite. My husband made the sanding box actually. I'm going to make blueprints for it because people seem to really like it. It does have, I wish I could pull the whole camera over, but I'm going to do a whole video on it because people seem to like it. It has an out vent that I can put out through my window or through a vacuum if you need to, but it has a light within it and then your gloves, and it just works really well for most things that will fit in it. Hi Ogu! So I'm just working on resin prints. I'm gonna sand a little bit. I usually would do this in a sanding box, but then that would not make this stream very interesting, so I do a rough sanding now. This sanding block has like a rough side. It's the roughest, slightly less rough, slightly less, and the smoothest ones are on the edges. So I just kind of go through as I'm sanding. And I definitely want to make sure I don't have anything rough on the inside, since that's going to be pressed right against their head. Usually you can see as you're sanding if something kind of catches a little bit, that you'll need to kind of focus more on those sections. But it's usually not too difficult. Resin printers are really great. Whereas 3D filament printers tend to be a little rougher. You have to do a lot more sanding and priming. Resin prints sand very easy, and they also are much higher detail. And so you don't really have so many sanding lines to sand, or layers. You don't really see so many of those, so that's why I like resin printers. I have a 3D printer that's filament printer, but I don't really use it. Get a tissue, my nose is runny. So now, before I start putting this crown together, I'm going to go ahead and just check on my Pokeball. So the filler sander primer is dry, and I can tell because it's kind of matte, and then you can just feel it over. So I'm just going to take a look and see if there are any kind of bumpy areas that I want to do just a final sanding on before I start painting it. I've got my little sander block here. There's just kind of a little print line here that I don't know what happened, but I'm gonna sand that down a little bit. And you can see where the sanding is needed. I also had a hole up here in the top to drain it because I did hollow out this one. That's all I'm doing. It's just a light sanding, and always end with that highest grit sanding part of your block so that it has the smoothest finish. It's almost like a polish once you get to the highest grit. So I like to kind of go over all the sections with that just to make sure we've got a nice base for whenever I start painting. Alright, so here's the little stand. Actually doesn't need any sanding. It already looks good. So I'm trying to think. I think I want this inside to be black. The button is white. And then this will be yellow for Pikachu. And I think the ends of his ears are black. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. The bad part about these Pokeballs is that you have to like paint one side and then let it dry and then paint the other and keep rotating. So I guess I will start with, maybe before I start him, I could show you how to put these sections together. I use resin. You can also use a super glue to put halves together or pieces of a resin print. Using resin and curing it together is going to be the strongest way because it is clearly made of resin. A resin connection is best. But if that doesn't work, using a super glue tends to be the next best option. I've also used E6000, but it has a 24-hour cure time, so that's a little bit of a pain in the butt. But I'm going to do the resin method right now. Again, you're going to want well ventilation, so I have a fan in my window that's right behind my printer wash and cure station that vents out, and I also have an air purifier behind me here, face masks, and when you can, cover your printer. But it's best obviously to have a better ventilated room. This is as ventilated as my room gets to kind of vent things straight out. So always use gloves. We're going to go ahead and turn this around here to my wash and cure. Use a respirator if you have it. Get myself set up here. Curing resin is pretty toxic. So what I have to do, it's not really sunny enough here right now, is that I have to kind of trick my machine to give me a UV light just for the initial curing, and then I will cover it up for the final cure because I can't put the pieces together without actually using my hands to cure this. There is on the back of your wash and cure station is a like little light or sensor so that it can sense when you put the lid on, because you want to have the lid on every time that you're curing your resin prints. But I need to do the first print while I'm holding it together with my hands. So I'm going to trick it and cover that sensor just so I can get that first cure, and then we're going to go ahead and set it up on the plate and completely cover it up, as that is the safest way to do resin print curing. So what I do is I get my, sorry about that, I get my resin. I have a stick here to get some resin out. I'm going to put put my mat here. I can actually keep this on because I'm going to need it afterwards. Your tray. I just get a little bit of resin out of the jar. Do we want to call it a jar? I don't know. And put it on both sides where the connection point will be. I've already put something behind the sensor, so I'm going to go ahead and put it to cure. Hold my pieces together where it needs to seal. And then just do a first seal really quickly. Again, ventilation is key. I'm going to turn it off. It only takes a few seconds to get that first seal. It's not very good, but it's enough to where I can now keep my hands off of it and close it up, which is the safest way to have it finish curing. So I'm going to set something up in here to hold my crown up because it is too big. Put my lid on. Now I can finish curing. So I'll probably cure it for another minute and hope that it stays upright. I'll go ahead and close up my resin. I'll probably stop it in a little bit and add just some more on that back connection point. It will begin to beep at you. I like to kind of overdo it. We're back in here. I'm going to let it go for one more spin just to finish curing that center section as much as I can without making it too brittle. Turn it off. We've got the crown. So now I have my two halves cured together. I'm going to take a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and just clean up the resin here. But everything is cured the way it should be. I've got a nice strong connection point. So let me go ahead and do that before I sand it. So I just got a little bit of alcohol on my hand, my finger. I'm just going to clean it up here. Let it dry. Let me check on my other prints real quickly. Okay, so this one's ready to be painted. So is this. Let me go ahead and get some paint out and get started on that. For Scarlet Witch crown, I use a mix of paints. I use Deco Art Stylin and a little bit of Dazzling Metallics. And then I also use a sponge brush. I know a lot of people don't do sponge brush painting, but for me I like to dab it, and so I don't get it down into the crevices, and if I do I can just use another brush to quickly clean it up. I just do a little bit of black, and I'll do a gloss varnish at the very end anyway. So let me go ahead and mix these. So So I just dab off a lot of the excess here. And get started. I actually might need more paint than I thought. But you would think that I would know by now because I've done this so much. I have done these crowns specifically a lot. Same with the Lady Loki ones. So I'll do a first coat, and then after it dries I'll take a look, and if there's any spots I can do a second. I try to also dab out any of the air bubbles that happen, which can happen with sponge painting. But again, we're going really lightly whenever we have a big divot or detail. I tend to get a lot of paint here into the detail points because it doesn't have a lot of layer difference. So I'll just go back through with a detail brush and paint the black in. I usually just leave a little bit where my hands were, and then I'll paint that after it dries. Or I can try to sit here and just dab the last bit. So I'm just going to check it over, add paint where something might be a little thin. A little bitty in there. Let me get some black for my details. I use black styling. It has like a semi-gloss and one of my thin detail brushes. Might as well get another paint can because I'll have to use this for my Pokeball as well. So I'm going to touch up some of these parts, and then I'm going to start working on my Pokeball while I have the black out. I just got a little bit here in some of the divots, so that's what I'm touching up. Also just kind of cleaning up as I go. Sometimes you'll kind of get it on top where the red is, and at this point the red's pretty dry already, so I can just use my finger to clean it up if I accidentally get it into the wrong spots. Okay, so that one's looking pretty nice. I'm going to leave it to finish drying, and then we'll check it one more time before I have to put a gloss coat on it. Now it's time for Pokeball. Let's take a look. So, like I said, I think I'm going to put the black in the divots. I like to do whenever I finish resin prints, I like to start with the lowest layers first, so anything that's, furthest down in, because that's going to be the hardest to go back in and touch up without touching the upper layers. So I'm going to start with the lowest color, which is black, and then work my way up. I just use acrylics for most of these, so I'm just going to continue using DecoArt acrylics. And you can do it directly onto a resin print. You actually don't need to put any type of primer on it if you don't want to. And I don't need a primer for this, so I'm going to go ahead and start painting him. Get a tiny brush here. You can be really messy on this one because you will be painting the upper layers afterwards. Just as long as you don't have globs of paint, you'll be good. So that's all the black that I need for him right now. I can go ahead and start on the yellow, which is the next major part of Pikachu. It's his primary color, so we're going to go with like a bright yellow. Thinking like a hazard yellow. It's a good one. Just looking through my paints real quick. I think that's probably my best yellow color. So I'm going to do that. I'll get another container for this. Boink. Okay. Now this one I have to be a little more careful, just because I have a lower layer that I don't really want to have to keep touching up so much, so I am going to be a little more careful about it as I continue to paint. Let's get I'm just going to use kind of a thin flat brush for this next one. This one's going to take a lot of layers of paint, I can already tell. So I have to remember that it is a ball, I can only do really one side at a time, so I have to allow for it to dry. There's no real stand for the bottom of it. It will roll around, so I'm just going to paint the top half for now. Try to be extra careful about my hand placement as I go. Can also probably do the inside of this back part of the tail. Right, let's see. So I've got the top half of this painted. I'm going to go ahead and let that dry. Resin prints do not react strangely to acrylics or anything, so the drying time's actually pretty quick. As you can see on this one, the red is pretty well already cured, and it's just acrylics. It's got a gloss undercoat. I'm going to do a varnish on top of this. I'm going to do it on the back as well, and then on top of that I'm going to super glue just a little bit of padding here for comfort, and I can super glue a strap as well. That's what I have on this one here. So this one already has that gloss coat on top, but it's been through the ringer. This is my used crown, so it's a little rougher than the other one. So for this one I'm going to go ahead back to my sanding booth, and I'm going to sand anywhere where you have to connect different pieces of a resin print with other resin. It's going to be a little bumpy. Same with on the back. I can leave the back because I'm going to have it covered up at some point, but in the front here I definitely want to make sure that I sand it down and smooth so that there's no weird textures going on. So I'm back to my sanding booth on this one just for a second. Now that it's been rough sanded, I can use my sanding block again. We go from the lowest grit, which means it has more texture, down to the highest grit, which is a smoother. And now you can see that the result is a lot smoother here on the front. So that'll be good for painting. We won't have any weird lighting or textures going on. And this one's going to need to be, I use the Rust-Oleum gloss for my base coats. This seems to work really nicely, and it doesn't have any problem working with resin prints either. So let me go ahead and stick these to the side real quick. And check on my Pokeball. It's beginning to dry. I'm going to get a little bit of white. I'm going to have to do a bunch of coats of the white for the button on the front anyway, so if I start now, I can keep adding as I go. And it probably won't get in the way of any of the drying positions. I'm going to put it right here beside my yellow. Alright. I'm going to use just another small brush again. Go ahead and do another coat of yellow. Let me get a paper towel real quick. I'll do just another coat up here. It's mostly dry. If you can wait to assemble your resin prints until after you're done painting, honestly, that's best. But this is the first Pikachu Pokeball that we had printed out, and I wanted to kind of check on the placement of the tail before I got started. Oh yeah, hi! Thanks for coming on. I have an Anycubic Photon Mono X. Go ahead and put my paintbrush up, it needs to dry a little bit. I'll show it to you, it's working right now. There's my setup. I have the Anycubic Photon Mono X, and then beside it is my Wash and Cure station. It's the Wash and Cure Plus, which the only difference between the regular Wash and Cure and the Wash and Cure Plus, I believe, is the size. So I have the bigger one because I think it was on sale or something. And honestly, they're all on sale right now. I don't know if it's a Valentine's Day sale, But like the Anycubic Photon Mono X is on sale for like $450. Super great price. I think I got mine for 6 something. And it prints out, it can print out the entirety of this Lady Loki crown base. For the Scarlet Witch crowns that I have, I print them out in 2 pieces because it's not quite big enough for that. But I mean, it does most of everything that I need. It's been pretty reliable for me. I use the Soraya Tech Smoky Black resin, wherever I happen to have put that. I found that to be the most reliable resin for good prints. But I also have an Ender Creality whatever filament printer, and I barely use it. Like my Anycubic Photon, the resin printer, is just like so much better. So I use that most often for almost everything, honestly. I think I have, for my 3D printer, I've printed 2 things. One was a test print, and the other was a Rocktopus. Which, you know, cool and everything, but not really worth my time. Like, see, it has a lot of print lines in it, so it just isn't as good as doing the Anycubic for me. But this has no print lines, and this came off the resin printer, and it's the Smoky Black Soraya Tech. So it's my favorite. That's what I use. I actually haven't tried any other ones yet for the resin printer, and I haven't needed to. Anytime that I've had a problem with this one, I've either been able to fix it myself or order a new part, and it's been fine. And I'm kind of tempted to buy a second one, but we'll see. We'll see about that. You know, I don't actually need a second one, I think, is the issue here. So I'm going to do a quick spray of this. I'm going to do a finishing gloss spray. It is too cold outside for me to use this, so I have a vent over there with the fan in it, and I also have my air purifier. But I'll just do. So that's my varnish spray. You can see it's real nice, and it works really well with resin prints especially. I don't think you could print this Scarlet Crown on a filament printer with the same results because you wouldn't have the really nice detail lines in it, which is why I choose a resin printer for this. I think it really is the best option. So I'm just gonna let that one dry. Not ideal, but it's cold here. In fact, it's snowing, so I'm a little limited on my options. Just have to vent as much as I can. Hope for the best. Put them over to the side to dry. I'm going to take my other guy and I'm going to put him in my sanding box, because the way that I start with this, I don't actually need the filling sanding primer. This is what I would use if I had a lot of like cracks and crevices that I needed to fill and then sand it off. But when these print out, you can see they're quite nice. So they don't need a filler primer. I just do a gloss black coat just for the gloss texture underneath, and then I start using my acrylic paints. Yeah, no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Rust-Oleum gloss. I'm going to take it to my sanding box. This is what it looks like whenever you just have the gloss coat on. And again, I do that because I like the texture underneath of the acrylics. It gives it a really nice gloss base, and then also it fills in all of the lower portions, which is super, annoying to do if you painted it all red and then had to paint in all the lower portions with the black. It just wouldn't turn out so crisp. So start with your lower portions, that black, and then sponge paint the red on top. I do the sponge paint and the acrylic, and the base coat is a gloss acrylic spray. So I'm going to let him dry over here. Let me get a towel for my hands. Alright, back to my Pokeball. And now I need a new towel just to have a clean one. Hey, Bam. Yeah, definitely do a resin printer. I can't recommend it enough. And like I said, Anycubic has them on sale right now for pretty cheap. So if you're looking at the Anycubic, I would even go for the Photon Mono X, the bigger one, just because it is like $450 maybe right now, and that's hella cheap, and you're gonna get the most out of it, I think. So I would recommend it. If someone was looking at getting a 3D type of printer and they're trying to decide between filament and resin, I would always be like, just get the resin, just go ahead and upgrade. 3D would be good, like the filament ones would be good for maybe lightweight giant pieces of armor or something, but like I just haven't had a use for it yet. It's just not my jam. So it just takes up space for me, really. Alright, back to Pokeball. I'm just going to keep doing layers on this top one. It's probably going to take 3 or 4 layers to really get a good coverage up here. This little bitty dry bit. Back to my white. I will have to go back and clean up some of the black. Let's get my... Oh yeah, see the thing about 3D printer, filament printers I hear is that there's a lot of sanding too. And I kind of hate sanding. Like my sanding box is great, but you know, it's only so big. And so I have to go outside and it is really cold here. So anytime that I don't have to sand, and I can save myself putting on a bunch of like PPE or whatever, it's just, yeah, that's the only reason well, that's a big reason why I don't want to get super into filament printing. At the same time, like, it's hard to beat, especially if you know how to make your 3D models, you know. I meant to fix that other part. Just cleaning up some of the details as I go. Try to keep my paint nice. With resin prints, because they're so like clean and crisp whenever they print out, whenever you do a final like gloss coat on top of everything, it really has a nice shine and a texture. I just really like using gloss coats on resin prints. It's kind of my thing. Ooh, put everything in a fiberglass resin. That's smart. Yeah, I mean, that's possible. There's I have a light PLA that I want to use for if I want to make a big piece of armor and I want it to be extra light. I don't know if I cover it in a resin, I guess that would kind of negate the light filament. But, I mean, that makes sense. I've definitely thought about coating my resin prints in another coat of resin just to get like a final gloss shine so you don't see any of the print lines. It's really good with like clear resins and stuff and translucent ones, but I haven't really had a need for it yet, so I haven't done it. So this is what the Scarlet Witch crown looks like after its gloss coat. It's pretty much ready for gluing anything on the back, including the strapping, and I'll just use a super glue for that. Super glue is great for these things. Go ahead and let me check my other one. The gloss coat takes a while to dry. It's pretty sticky for like up to a day. Do one more. Work on this at some point. So I'm just going to keep working on that one. This is the next thing I also have here. Most of the things I've done are the crowns and the Pokeballs for today, but I also do have a Lady Loki crown that I do need to work on. It needs a rough sanding. I'm printing out one more horn, so I think I'm going to wait for that last horn before I really start working on it. But this one, again, goes together. I print it in sections and then glue them together, and I'm going to use a super glue for this only because it's really difficult to get the resin to cure inside of all of this. The light doesn't penetrate quite as well. So the crowns I did not model myself. I actually found ones that I liked on Etsy and then reached out to the artists and said, hey, mind if I print some of these resin crowns to sell? And they're like, yeah, we don't have a resin printer. Go for it. And so I work with those artists. The Pokeball, I'm working with Beardless Props. I could make it myself, but he is, he's just got extra time right now. So he wanted to work on them. So I said I'd like to, you know, make a few Pokeballs that have like different character designs. And I said, let's just start with Pikachu. And he said, I'll just do it now. So we're testing it out. It's the first Pikachu one that I've printed, and I'm going to paint it and finish and see how it looks, and probably just sell them. But yeah, I didn't model any of these ones myself. No, I'm not like a super excellent artist yet when it comes to modeling, but I can make a bunch of basic stuff. So yeah, that's like kind of the next step, I think, is to get better at ZBrush and modeling so I can do it myself. But right now, working with the artists has worked out so far. I'd like to paint the other side of this Pokeball, but the yellow is not really super opaque, so it's going to take a bit. Ooh, my other print came off. So I can show you how I do my resin prints as soon as I get them off the printer. I wish I had my mask, my ventilator mask, but I don't. So here we go. So I'm going to set myself up with my washing cure ready to go. This is a vat of isopropyl alcohol, highest percentage you can find. I have my gloves. You don't want to touch resin, obvious reasons. If you don't know resin and what it is when it gets on your hands, if you were to get in the sunlight and it cures, it does burn, it is toxic, you don't want it, which is why we have covers as well. So I have a magnetic plate on the bottom of my resin printer so I can bend it off when I'm ready rather than taking the whole plate off. So I flip it over, got my horn, I just bend it to separate it. And I put it in my isopropyl alcohol. I can bend this to pull the feet, whatever you want to call them, off. And then I put my magnetic plate back on. Take my gloves off. And I like to cover this right away. When you're doing the wash, you don't actually have to put a cover on it. So you put it up to 2 minutes and get it started. And it has an agitator in the bottom that will begin to spin. It washes all of whenever a resin comes out of the vat, it is still coated in, liquid resin, anything that wasn't cured. And so you want to wash all of that off. And then once it's washed off with the isopropyl alcohol, you can put it back in the UV light for a final full cure. So I'm going to let that go ahead and do its thing. So then I'll be able to begin the process of that. So for this, I'd like to do I always do a little bit of a fleece on the inside. It's more comfortable to wear. Resin crowns are okay, but any comfort is best. And then I add also some elastic banding on the back. So I'm going to go ahead and get myself some of this fleece or flannel. I do a red. And then I also want some scissors and some super glue. Okay. So I've got, it's just like a soft fleece that I put on the inside. I just fold it. So I have a center and general shape. And make sure it is the right shape for in here. And cut the bottom up just a little bit. Okay, so to add anything to a resin print, super glue is a great option. That's what I'm going to use for in here. Being really gentle about placement. So I just do a comfort lining on the pressure point, which is right here on the forehead. So it has a nice placement here. Feels comfy. I know that whenever I do my elastic bands, they go just below these two marks here. So I'm going to get my elastic out and cut myself a piece. And I usually measure it up against ones that I've done before, because right now I'm kind of forgetting the length that it's supposed to be. And just do some super glue for this as well. Yes, I sit like a goblin. So doing it right, I said below, but it's above, sorry, right above the two little stripes here is how I'm adding mine. Hello! How is you? Thanks for coming by. I'm just crafting. I had a bunch of orders to finish, so I figured I would just do it while people watched. I'm doing it anyway. Okay, so as this is drying, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do the cure now that my wash is finished. Wash is finished. It's in the same system. We pull this out. You have a reflective bottom and a plate that will spin. And you can tilt the top downwards. You pull your item out. And I'm going to let this dry before I cure it. But I can go ahead and get it set up. You put your lid on. Put the lid back on my tank. And then I change this to cure. And I'm going to cure it for 2 minutes whenever I'm ready. But I'm going to let it dry for a bit before I do. It still has, you know, alcohol and stuff all over it. So, anyway, this one should be about done. Let's test it out. It's good to go. It's the right size. I always just like to check before I send it off. I'm going to let it finish curing for one more day, just because paint takes, you know, a while to get that final good cure. I always think of it like nail polish almost. Let me see a little spot I want to touch up because I'm kind of a perfectionist. Okay. Now this one's good to go. I'm going to sit him over to the side. Put my other one back where it came from. Ooh. Glad everyone's doing good in crafting and stuff today. Super fun. Sorry, it's kind of hard to get, oh god, that looks bad. It's kind of hard to get my face in here while I'm crafting, so I figure you want to probably see the things I'm crafting. I'm also working on a Pokemon Pikachu Pokeball, so I'm going to start painting that again because it's going to take a bunch of layers of paint here. Lots of painting, lots of painting. Make sure my glue's closed. I've got yellow and white, so I'm going to go back to the yellow again and do another coat on this top section. Maybe I need to buy a more opaque acrylic because this is extensive. I know a lot of people probably would opt to do airbrushing, but I don't have a functioning airbrush. This is the best I can do, fam. This is it. Thank you. I think I might give this one to my brother. I mean, I'll put some pictures up for Etsy sales or whatever, but I think I might give it to my brother. back of this too. Yeah, I should do some heavy body acrylics. That'd probably be a bit better. Honestly, some of these, like the Extreme Flex is usually pretty good, but other ones are kind of hit or miss. So, and I haven't really bought more paints in a while. Been a little bit lazy about it, so it's probably my own fault. I would paint my other Scarlet Witch crown, but it's going to take a while for that one to dry. So I'm just going to hang out here with this guy. I think I might go and sand some of this one. Sanding box. Sanding box in the back over here. I will have blueprints for it sometimes so that everyone else can make one too. It's not too difficult. Alright, so I've got, it's kind of a rough sanding so far. I'll get my sanding block out. Let's do some light work here on anything that's sticking out. Some spots here that I need to clean up a little bit. Again, for like the crowns and things, you're kind of looking for comfort, so as you're finishing a print, keep in mind how is this going to be used? And make sure that the parts that are up against skin are, you know, comfortable to wear. I usually just take my thumb and kind of feel around any spots that might be sticking up. Alright. So this guy I will sand back in the box because I need to make sure this bottom part is smooth, and so that will take a little extra sanding. And then I also like to make sure that these fit. So sometimes whenever you print resin, it can pull and warp a little bit, and so it's not quite the fit that you thought it was going to be. I don't know if you can see here, there's just like a little bit of a gap. So I need to either see if there's something stuck inside, which there's really not, or I need to just sand down a little bit of the key, the registration key. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to sand down part of this key, finish this up. So it has a lot nicer fit. I just sanded down the registration key all the way to the edges. I pulled the Dremel tip out so the sanding bit is right at the edge. And now it has a nicer flush fit. So for this, as I'm sanding, I can see that there are a few little spots, like imperfections almost, little divots in the resin. You can fill that in with more resin and cure it, or you can add a little bit of quick seal. So I'm going to get out some quick seal to show you. Both work just as well on resin. With quick seal, you do have to let it dry before you can sand it again. So I have these little divots in here. I'm just going to fill it in with the quick seal and smooth it out. Alright, as that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and do another coat on my Pokeball. More painting. More. I think I'm finally getting to the point where it's maybe the last coat. Then I get to do it all over again for the bottom half. It's promising. Thanks for coming over. No problem. I'm always willing to give advice for things that I have experience with. Not necessarily maybe that it's the rightest, but it's what's worked for me, so I'm glad it helped. Alright, so I'm going to do my cure now. Should be about dry. I have it on cure, 2 minutes, and you just push the button. The UV will do a final cure on that horn, and then I get to sand it to add it to the crown setup. Let's go ahead and clean up my area real quick. And let him finish. It'll beep at me whenever it's done, which is nice. Okay. I'll go ahead and get myself a tissue. And check my crown, the other one that's drying. It's probably going to take the whole evening to dry. It's pretty, the weather here is pretty atrocious right now, so it's not going to dry as fast as it might if it were warmer. We'll let him chill for the evening. I just won't get to finish that one tonight. And it makes you wonder how this other horn will fit. I'll probably have to sand down that key as well. I can go ahead and put this one on already though. So I'm going to use, I got a better super glue for putting the horns into the crown. Again, you can use resin, but it's a little bit difficult with the thicker pieces because the UV light can't penetrate the whole way through. So let me go ahead and put this down here. I'm going to add super glue to the center and also all the way around the edges. Just give it a little bit to dry. My other piece has cured. Probably do that sandable fillable primer here on the bottom of this horn, just because it is one that hits the light a lot, so I want it to be as smooth as possible. So I try not to cut corners on the highly reflective surfaces. But that horn is already super glued on, it's good to go. Let me pull the other one out and bring it over. So we've got horn number 2. See if I need to sand this guy some more. Oh, that fits pretty good. So I actually won't have to sand the key registration at all. I just need to sand the outside edges before I glue them in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's do the sanding box. So he's good to go. I'll go ahead and add some more super glue. Attach him. Why is everything a him for me? My genderless crown. Super glue obviously is super fast, so you won't have to really sit with it for too long. If you're doing a resin cure, again, pretty fast. E6000, you do have to do a 24-hour cure. So an E6000 I feel like is not super reliable. I would always recommend doing a resin cure for separate pieces or super glue instead of E6000 for sure. This is a 2 intact horns crown, Lady Loki crown, and I'm going to go ahead and do a quick 2-in-1 fillable sandable primer on just some sections. I'm going to step out for a quick second to do that where it's a little more ventilated. Okay, so I only did it at the parts that I sanded the most, right here and here, that might have more scratch marks, and here where there was a few layers showing in the front. These are going to be the highest shine areas. I don't really worry about anything in the back, but I do want these fronts to look really nice, so test those out and go ahead and let that dry. And I can paint another layer, Pikachu. He's coming out pretty cute. Again, I can't paint the bottom until the top's finished drying, so he's just gonna have to chillax right there for a while. I'm not liking the way my Rust-Oleum gloss is looking. I'm gonna try Krylon. So this is a gloss black acrylic as well. Don't get the enamel. I mean, you can get enamel, but if you get enamel, it takes a really long time to dry, like over a day. So the acrylic does dry a lot faster. I'm gonna try that for this dude as soon as I'm ready. Again, I do a gloss coat for the base because it just looks a lot nicer when I do the acrylics over top. I'm doing the really smooth, highest grit sandpaper part just to smooth out where I had done the fillable sandable primer. Mostly because it's just some little marks that I was filling in, nothing big, no big gaps. What's up, Beardless Props? Yeah, you want to see him? I need to take a picture for you. This is where his tail. I have it slightly off center, but you could even put it centered so that his tail kind of comes up. He's looking cute. I'm going to do the black tips on the ends and everything after this first coat is done. But I did this one hollow, so I did drill a hole out on the top. It's a lot lighter, but it's nice. Here's his little stand. Yoink. It's a cute little bitty. Alright, let me go ahead and step out real quick to do this one. So once I do these guys, I can only spray part of it, and then I have to sit them up to dry. Shouldn't take too long, but it is kind of cold, so I don't know. Yeah, I think this Krylon's working out better today. I don't know what happened to my Rust-Oleum. Usually that's my go-to gloss, but it's not doing me good today. So, yeah. Yeah, I figured you could fix the keyhole easily, but now you see what I mean. I had to just, for this keyhole, because it didn't have a hole in this one, I just sanded down the key. So, it was not a huge deal. Open up a window. Even having these like spray painted things sitting in here drying is gross. It's gross. It's cold as nuts outside, and there's snow out there, but I would rather be able to breathe without having spray paint smell than not. Yeah, I'm really excited about the Pokeballs. I think they're super cute. They're going to turn out real nice.
Nothing. Just nosing in on you.
Yeah, thanks for coming and saying hi. Thanks for working on Pokeballs with me. I was telling everyone about what we're doing and how you're making them and stuff. I think they'll be super, super cool. Is my cat really going to jump up here right now? Is this really... It's really about to happen. I'm gonna get paint. Fur in all of my paint. Ooh, I think that yours are dry enough. That's good. Guys, gonna need a little bit of cleanup after this on the black spots. Get more careless as I keep painting. It'd be like that. And I have black spray paint on my hands, so. Thanks! I like when my thing makes noises. I still haven't figured out exactly what all the noises are yet, but it makes me excited nonetheless. Oh, it says subscribed. That's what it means. Let me get some. I usually like to try to cut down on my time by, as something's drying, to clean up other spots and other dried sections without moving it. I'm just going to clean up some of these black areas. Stop falling over. Do white again as well. Guess I could spin this little buddy around so when he is drying, you can just paint on the bottom without having to move him too much. You alright, cat? Let me let my cat out. He finally wants to leave. Go on, little buddy. Wish I had a coffee. Should have done that before I came down here. Let me see if my crown might be. It's going to be a huge pain in the butt to dry because it's so cold, especially now that I've opened up the window. Okay, so let me check this other guy as he's going. this one I'm going to put to the side. It is already spoken for, so as it dries, I will go ahead and get a box ready. Get him out. Not so sure about this Rust-Oleum anymore. It was my go-to and it let me down. Don't know how I feel about it. Don't need my filler sander anymore. Don't need my clear coat. These cats do come and go as they please. My cat, I just today put him on a timed feeder, so he'll only get fed 4 times a day. It used to be that he could just help himself, but he's getting a little chunky. So I put him on a timer, and he's probably discovering that right now, which is pleasing. So even if it looks a little bit textured from the paint lines that you're doing or whatever, so long as you have a smooth color, so I mean color isn't where you can't see through parts of it or whatever, as long as it's as opaque as it's going to get, once you put a gloss coat over it, it really takes away all of that weird texturing that you get from uneven paint lines. So I wouldn't worry too much about it if you're painting your resin print and it's lumpy, for lack of a better word. Try not to have big globs, but it'll look fine once you put that last coat on. I also have to look up what Pikachu looks like again to make sure if he has black tips on his ears and maybe black on the end of his tail. I don't know. Somebody help me. Who knows Pikachu? Trying not to move him very much just because I'd like to keep layering on this paint without having to adjust him very much if I can. Check that Scarlet Witch crown and see. I have to mix some more red paint if I want to do that. And I would also have to this sponge paint out. This is the last sponge brush I have, unfortunately. I need to get some more. They're cheap. Let's see on this crown. So this is the one where I did the gloss coat already. And sponge painted a bit. I think it'll probably be good to go. So we do a red. And I put a little bit of this metallic in it. lightly sponge so that we don't get into all the lower details. I can clean it up afterwards, which I will do, but we want the majority of this red to be on the raised sections. Try to sponge out any of the bubbles and just make sure you have a nice even coating. Getting there. I'm just going to check it over, make sure I don't have any really blatantly, you know, splotchy areas. Just lightly tap over those areas. Don't need a whole lot of thick paint application, you just need it to be even. And make sure there's no paint bubbles. That happens a lot with sponge painting. Just kind of tap them off. Okay. I can also, as it's drying then, take a thin detail brush with my black and go in, and if I have any sections where I accidentally sponge painted too far into the black areas, then I can touch that up now. pretty good coverage. I've got, a little picky. I see one spot that I'd like to clean up. A lot of times where it kind of bleeds into the lower sections is going to be towards the ends, the edges. Like that. Alright, and there's one section right up here in the front, very thin. Always go in and take another brush with the red and just clean up any top parts that I also messed up. Or if there's any little spots that were just kind of missed, or maybe a bubble popped and there was some see-through, just clean it up. Alright, so this one's good to dry for a very long time. Mostly because that bottom is not, the bottom coat of the gloss isn't drying very fast because it is cold here. I can close my window again. And begin on the yellow for Pikachu once more. I can find that yellow like this. Okay. I almost don't want to pick him up because my hands are so dirty now. I truly do sit like a gremlin. just going to let him dry for a bit before I try to do another coat and check on my other crown while I'm waiting here. So this crown is doing pretty solid. These ones are a little bit different than my others in that I don't actually do any hand painting. It is all spray. Metallics I find are better in spray than hand painted. I have to wait for that gloss coat to dry on this before I do the metallic, but this is the one that I use for whenever I'm ready. Although that other Rust-Oleum let me down earlier, so we'll have to see if this one's doing alright or what's happening. Put my resins back and clean up my area. Gotta show you how to do my resin setup over here. So I just like to set this, I like to put everything back and kind of contained. So I take off the sections that you need for curing and put them away. My basin of isopropyl alcohol and then the lid for that. And they're both off. So they're good to go. And it's my 3D printer, which I never use. Just the resin printer. I like this Pikachu to drive a little faster, but I could start cutting out the backing for this crown. And I can't really spray the gold on until that's cured either. It's looking pretty cute. Trying to see if I have any spots that need cleaned up, which I kind of do. Where'd my towel go? So what's kind of a pain is if you put your resin prints together before you paint, then you have to work around them, and this tail's a bit of a pain in the butt to paint under it in the black. I need to look up a picture of Pikachu to remember what the colors are like, because I don't remember. Get another towel for this. Alright. I've got to stop touching Pikachu with my dirty hands. Okay, so let's look up what Pikachu actually looks like. Pikachu. Oh, he's got those little red cheeks too. I have to do that. And he's got a little bit of brown toward the base of the tail. Pikachu. Alright, so I've got to do black tips on the ears, brown towards the base of the tail, and red cheeks, which I forgot that he has those. I have to figure out where I want those to be then. Let's see here. Pikachu. Alright, I need to get some browns. I'm going to open up my YouTube again so I can see what people say. Hey, thank you! Yeah, I have right now an Umbreon, which he's already gone, but I print them out anyway. So I have an Umbreon on there, and I'll have a Pikachu, and then I think we're going to just try to make a bunch of different variations of different Pokemon whenever we have time. Because they're kind of fun to make. So, my friend is the one who has been designing them. I was going to, but he has some time and is excited about it. His name's Beerless Props, and so he designs them. And then I am printing them and finishing them as I have time and as I want to do them. So let me get some browns out. Get ready to do Pikachu's tail. I like a lighter brown. So we'll prep that. And this resin print will be good in just a second. I'll do another coat if I can on Pikachu and maybe start his tail, the base where it's brown. More yellow. Wish I had a brighter yellow for this. Ooh. That's what I got. So I'm just going to put a little bit of brown in here and get it started. Go for my phone for a little bit. Alright, so we've got a little bit of brown. I'm just going to do his tail. Turn around. So the base of his tail, it's light brown. Let that dry a bit. This brown isn't mixed up enough. No. Alright, I think I have this dry enough where I can do metallic coat. Again, I like to spray metallics. It looks a lot nicer than doing hand-painted metallics. I'm going to step out and spray it real quick. Be right back. So this is sprayed. This side is done. This other side I have to wait for to dry so I can, you know, have a place to put my hand. I'm going to let that dry for just a little bit. Then I can spray the other side, and I usually end up doing like 2 coats. Just looks nicer. What's Pikachu doing? Oh, I needed to check. I think his tail doesn't have black on the end. It's only the ends of his ears. And then I can use the red that I used for Scarlet Witch to do the cheeks. That's what I'm working on now. So he's not drying very fast. Quick spray to the other side of this. Then I'll let that dry before I do a second coat. Check on my Scarlet Witch crown. Need to cut another backing for that, same way I cut the other one. And then I'll do a gloss coat on that too to finish it up. I don't do any gloss coats on metallics. I think it takes away from like the metallic shine. So that one will be good as is as soon as I'm finished a second coat. Which is a little different from I guess the other resin prints that I do, since I always finish with the gloss coat on everything else. I think Pikachu's looking pretty good. Probably wash my hands, maybe. Kind of sad about ruining Pikachu over and over again with my dirty hands. Just gonna get one more spray. Step out. this one dry. And then I need to cut the little comfort band area on the inside of this. I do a brown for this one just because it's right up against the skin, and I don't really have, you don't have a gold fleece, so it doesn't quite look as nice. I try to match the fleece to the color of whatever the crown is. So I'm going to get a brown out and cut it right now. There's scissors. This one's a lot smaller than the Scarlet Witch one to cut. I just kind of have the shape memorized. So this one's kind of the shape, and I put it right behind the forehead area just so it's a lot more comfortable as it's sitting against a forehead. But I'm going to wait just a little bit on that one for it to dry. Measure it up, make sure it fits. Super glue, best glue for this. You can also use E6000 for these because you don't really have to hold them in place, even though it has a 24-hour cure time. Alright, so I have this one just drying on the back here. And then it will just need the elastic band, and that one will be finished as well. Again, don't do a gloss coat on metallics. It'll take away from the shine, and you don't really need it. Probably try and glue my comfort band on this one as well. It's in a red. I don't want to hold it up against anything. So that one will be a good placement there. This one also needs a gloss coat on top. Okay, so it can finish drying now. And then all I'll have to do is add the elastic strap for that crown. Pretty good progress on those two. Got glue and paint and crud all over my hands, so I'm going to try not to touch Pikachu very much. He still needs to dry for a while, but there he is for now. He'll look a lot cuter here in the future, but I'm going to let him dry for a while, and I'm going to go have myself a sandwich. So let me go ahead and end the stream. Thank you guys for coming on and following me. Here I am, my computer set up. But I'm going to come on and finish Pikachu a bit later. He needs some time to dry. But at least I got a lot of this finished. So yeah, thanks for coming on. I'll try to have some more video later about different tips about resin printing and such. But I hope this was helpful. And thanks for stopping.